Welcome to 44 and 1. I am GVizzle. This, as always, is Tempest. And today I'm going to complain about my haircut. It's not, okay, it's, like, subscribe, blah, blah. It's not the worst haircut I've ever had. But every time I get this hairdresser, she fucks it up just a bit. Like, I show her a picture and I'm like, this is how I want it. And we talk through it. And it's not like I show up with a picture of like long flowing curly locks and I'm like, do this. Like, I know she's not a miracle worker. So I'm very realistic in the type of haircut that I want. But she always does something wrong that then can't be fixed without taking the haircut a lot shorter. So I just kind of walk out disappointed. And I do it to myself every time because the salon, I use the word salon loosely, the salon is a 10-minute walk from my house. It takes 20 minutes to get my hair cut in and out, and it costs $30.
What?
Which I know I'm getting what I pay for. Absolutely I am. And then I have to come home. Like the last time I got a haircut there from the same woman, I came home and immediately ordered like a little hairdressing kit from Amazon. And when it came, I was like, fixing it up myself. So I do it to myself, knowing I'm going to walk out unhappy.
No, wait, hang on a second.
It's cheap and fast.
No, you haven't got what you paid for. Women, like, what they get away with cutting your hair is fucking ridiculous.
What do you mean, the price wise?
Yeah, I mean, my haircut takes 15-20 minutes. It's half the price of yours.
Yes, and my husband's is the same. Like, he goes, I think he's actually found a place that's like $20. Yeah, and he's in and out. But like women's hair, like when I had long hair, even if I went in for like a trim, it was like $50. It's like, oh, you have long hair. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still walking out with long hair. Like, you're not.
Yeah, you're not doing anything with it.
This is not elaborate. And then, like, I remember once I went from long hair to like a pixie cut. I don't know if you know what those are, but yeah. So I went from middle of my back hair to a pixie cut, and that one, I think I was in there for like an hour and a half, and then
why?
It was like because he was like, it was, instead of just like cutting it and then shaping it, it was like he wanted to, like, every couple inches he'd cut off a couple inches. Like, you sure you want to do? I'm like, just fuck shit. Like,
Jesus, man.
I know what I want to do with my head. And then one because I'm not fussy about where I get my haircut, obviously. But one time I was in like a Walmart doing some shopping, and I hadn't had a haircut in a while, and they had one of those like cut rate. And so I walked in and it was like a $15 haircut. I was like, I just need to get my hair cut. So then I tell her what I want, which is a pretty simple cut. It took her 2 hours. And then halfway through, she was like, I'm sorry, I usually only cut senior hair. I don't know how to do this. So if I was a golden girl, I would have walked in a lot faster. But
why didn't she tell you to start with? Man, people are so dishonest. Why didn't she just say, look, I usually cut seniors' hair. You might want to rethink this transaction we're about to have.
Perhaps. But like, the place that I regularly go to, because it's close and cheap and fast, is went there once, and I got one woman who gave me the best haircut I've ever had. And so I keep wanting to get her, but then I keep getting stuck with the other one. But that reminds me of the pyramid. Have you seen the cheap, fast, and good pyramid? I should know better because I've taught this.
What? We don't have it as a pyramid. We think of it as like a 3-legged cat or something. But yeah.
That's weird. That's really unusual.
Yeah, like, it's deliberate. It's British, isn't it?
Okay. So for anybody who doesn't know, you can have, I don't even know, cheap, fast, and good. You can have it cheap and you can have it fast, but you can't have it good. You can only have 2 of the 3. And I want cheap. Yeah. So I go for cheap and fast, and then I complain that it's not good. I should know better because.
But it doesn't always apply though, because I can go in for the same haircut at 2/3 of the price. It'll take the same amount of time, and they will do a better job.
Yeah, because that's what we like to call a male privilege.
No, what we call it is women fucking women over for no fucking reason.
I don't know what it is. I don't know. And I know some women like the salon experience. I do not. I just want to get in.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Which is probably why I act like I'm on the run, because I usually don't go to the same hairdresser twice, because if they start to recognize you, then they want to make small talk. And I'm like, you're behind me. I already have shitty hearing. I can't hear you.
Yeah.
You don't care about my life. I don't care about yours. You're just making small talk. Let's just do this exchange in quiet and silence.
Exactly. I think it should
Do
be
you have any-
default.
Do you have any kids? What are you doing for the holidays? Taking a vacation? And then this one, when I told her the first time I went there, I told her I didn't have kids. She went on a whole lecture about why I should have kids.
Oh, Jesus Christ. The first time I went to see my local barber, he talked about how him and his mate were throwing stones at their kids as they were running around the garden screaming.
That's biblical.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And he was like, we weren't doing it properly. Like, we weren't proper throwing them. It's like, okay, that makes it better.
But you're still
Throwing stones at your kids.
Yeah. It's still not like, I mean, all it takes is one wrong stone and your kid is wearing an eye patch for the next
Yeah. Or they've had a frontal lobe lobotomy.
Eye patch is probably a little less frightening.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Do men get the same, like when you tell people you don't want to have kids, do people give you a hard time about it, or are they just like, oh, okay?
In a different way. I think it happens less because there's less men that say it. I think there are more people that have an opinion about women not having kids than men not having kids.
Because it's our job.
Yeah, that's what you're there for. Is to breed. Once a year you need to pop out a kid or you're not a real woman. I say that in jest. I didn't mean that. Yeah, so what we mainly get is people kind of claiming that you will never become a man or a real man or a responsible adult until you're taking responsibility for your own children. And they think that
you take responsibility for yourself and still be an adult.
I think it comes to it's part of this false idea, really, that men think that they need to do certain things in order to be a real man. And those things that they're being taught are wrong. Those aren't the things that make you a real man.
So do you ever get people talking to you about like your legacy and carrying on family name and that type of stuff? Yeah.
Not as, like I say, it has different connotations than when they say it to a woman. It's less hateful.
Well, less judgy probably, because I don't get the carry on family name, but like I could see how men would, because that's a big deal. I worked at a head office for a shoe company many moons ago, and it was owned by 4 brothers, and the eldest brother was like the CEO, and then all the rest of them, they went into the hierarchy of their age. But like we would hear how he treated his daughters and how he would talk about his wife, and like he blamed his wife for not giving him sons because now he doesn't have anyone he can pass his company on to. It has to go to one of his stupid nephews instead of his own children. Like, it was a woman's shoe store. You can't give that to
yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Oh, and the markup on women's shoes is
ridiculous.
Abhorrent. They would go on buying trips to like different countries. So they would come back and we would see like the price that they bought the shoes for on the box. And then we would see what they would be marked up for. And it was like 2.5 times the price.
Yeah. The funny thing I find, because I mean, you could tell by looking at me, I'm not exactly the height of fashion, and I don't really pay attention. Yeah, I don't really pay attention to it. I don't really care. So I will quite happily buy last season's footwear for like £10. And then everyone else is paying 50 quid.
But I don't even keep up with the seasons. Like I understand fast fashion because it's fun and it's cheap, but like I don't anymore anyway. I don't buy clothes often enough to buy trendy stuff, and I'm the same. I've never been on the leading edge. Of fashion. I still have shirts and shoes that I've had for like 20 years.
yeah. I've got some hoodies I've had since I was about 18. I mean, hoodies last a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's not easy. It's not easy to the same company. So they hired me. I had just finished school for like advertising sales. So I'd gotten out, and it was like my first adult job outside of school. And I was working at the time part-time at a grocery store, and it was a unionized grocery store. This is 1995, 96, in and around that area. So I was working at the grocery store making $18 an hour. in 1996 money, which is like $1 million an hour.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's gonna like £9 an hour.
It was a unionized grocery store. So like shortly around that same time, they decided to get rid of the union, and then they closed the store because people fought against getting rid of the union. They closed the store and then reopened it as a discount store and paid everybody minimum wage. So they expected everyone to go from $18 an hour down to $6 an hour. And we were like, bye. So, yeah. But then like my first grown-up full-time job was at this shoe store, this shoe head office, and I was making $10 an hour. And I was like, are you kidding me? But then I found out that my predecessor, the person I replaced, who was a man, was making $20 an hour. And when they hired a woman, they were like, oh, good, we can get her in cheaper. And I was like young and stupid. It was my very first job at a school. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I found out a couple months later that like I was making half of what the last person made because he was a guy.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it depends on the company. It's on an individual level, isn't it?
Like, yes, no, specifically that company, not maybe. Yeah. I was told.
Yeah.
Told by the payroll person who sat beside me.
That's a bit different. Yeah, that's
she evidence. Knew. And like, I hope she left eventually. Like, they abused that woman. They would make her order their kids school supplies. It's like when it was time to get their daughters like their books for university, instead of getting their daughters to do it, they would get this poor woman to do it. And like all their grunt work, she was buying their Christmas presents.
Oh,
and,
fuck that.
Yeah. It was awful. I will never shop in any of their stores.
Yeah, the two most at-risk people in terms of getting taken advantage of in a workplace are middle-aged women and young men. Under
young
21.
Men, really?
Because both of them, depends. Like I mean, this is super general, but they both have this mindset where they want to please the people and they just want to like do a good job and they want to be seen to be doing a good job, and they just want to keep the workplace flowing, that sort of thing. That's for the middle-aged women. That usually they've had a certain trajectory in life, and then so because middle-aged women tend to be more agreeable than other groups of people, it's quite easy to get them to do what you want.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that still the case? Because I'm a middle-aged woman and I'm
but you also don't have kids, and you have quite a strong relationship with your mother, but you didn't with your father and that sort of thing. So you've had
that makes a difference?
Yeah, I think so. Like on an individual level, there's going to be individual differences. But speaking of the group, if you think of a middle-aged woman who's like maybe had several children, she's been taught how to be a certain way and trying to keep peace in the home and be a housewife and stuff while also having a job. And you tend to kind of, if your husband's a certain way, you tend to kind of need to act in a certain way through your life. So by the time you get to middle age, you've kind of developed this routine and this habit of doing certain things, and then workplaces exploit that.
That's a nice way of saying your spirit has been beaten.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. But your will has been broken, and they're taking advantage of that.
Well, actually, I think there's a bit more of an optimistic thing in it, that like these women haven't been broken because they're still being productive. They're going to work every day. They're turning up. They have less sick days than other people. They complain less. They do more of the work. And they haven't been broken by these shitty people in their lives. And they're still turning up every day performing. So
good on them.
Yeah, and it's because like middle-aged women and young men have that in common, that they're both workhorses. Like young men who haven't been married yet, they don't have children yet, and they want to make the name for themselves in their career because of the whole like toxic masculinity stuff of that's what they're taught to do. It's really easy to exploit young men in the workplace because it's like, you can't complain. You're not allowed to. People laugh at you if you complain. And they just tell you to fucking get on with it. You're a young man. You can lift that heavy object. You can destroy your body and do all this and that. And it's like you could do 60-hour weeks. No one cares. And yeah, they're exploited in the same way. But there's a different underlying mechanism that makes them exploitable.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there you go.
Well, there we go. Started off with a haircut and we ended up with exploitative workplaces.
Yeah. But I will say that, like, it's really hard to tell people this because people jump down your throat straight away. And I think it's all in the delivery. Because if you just tell people the gender wage gap doesn't exist, then that immediately gets people's backs up. And then you have to say, no, bear with me. The problem isn't the gender wage gap, because the analyses that have been done on that are really bad. And in my opinion, they're just there to manipulate people and make them angry. The real problem, or the real problem is that the societal inequality towards child rearing and the fact that workplaces don't support young mothers, particularly young single mothers, to advance their careers while having children. So you have a lifetime earnings gap. So a woman at the end of her working life is a few years behind the men, because you have to take, say, 3 years out every time you have a kid. That's basically what it equates to, 3 years behind in your career, but every time you have a child.
So that's interesting, because like in the United States, most companies only offer like 6 weeks of maternity leave. So women are going back to work within 6 weeks of having a child. So how does that equate to 3 years per child with its maybe they've been off during their pregnancy for, a couple weeks beforehand and 6 weeks after. So that's 2 months. Like, it shouldn't have that detrimental effect on their earnings or career.
It's everything around it. So they might have to have flexible working hours so that their kid can go to nursery and they can pick their kid up from school, because there's a lot of stuff in terms of child rearing that is the woman's burden still, and men aren't taking on the 50% share of that burden. So it means then that, like, the woman can't stay late at the office where the man can, because she's got to go get the kids. But then the bloke can stay and put in the extra hours and make it look like he's putting in the same amount of work, when in reality people don't. When they do those extra hours, they don't do any extra productivity. But that's calm down. There's also the so they can't do all of the performative things that the men can do to make it look like they're doing more work when they're not. They also can't just be there at the beck and call of their bosses in order to get their name out there so they can get the promotion. So men will get the promotion instead, because they can do all those performative actions. But then there's also the costs of the child rearing, and this is particularly bad for single parents, the vast majority of whom, like 90% of single parents, are mothers. And it's because of things like childcare costs. So if I remember, like, when I was a little kid and my mum was a single mum, she was working 2 jobs at the time, but half of her income from the second job got eaten up by childcare costs because there's no one to look after me. So
there's a guy I worked with who, he and his wife had 6 children, and it was cheaper. Like, the cost of daycare was way over and above either one of their salaries for 6 kids. So they were like, he made a bit more than she did. So she quit her job to stay home and take care of the kids, just because it was the only financial decision they could make, because they couldn't afford, which it's a whole other topic. They had a small car because they couldn't afford like a van or anything. So whenever they would travel, he would take the car with 3 kids and she would take a bus with 3 kids, and like he would drive alongside the bus so they could like
Jesus Christ. Like that's the other argument as well. Like, who needs 6 kids? And if you've got a certain income, that's not the government or anyone else's responsibility to fund your childcare costs because you're irresponsible.
But it's a really unpopular opinion, right? Because then by saying that if you can't afford children, you shouldn't have children, is very classist and ableist. But at the same time, like, I knew someone who didn't get a cat because she couldn't afford a cat, and then 3 months later she was pregnant, and it's like, like, there's it sounds terrible to say, and it sounds classist, and it sounds ableist, but then at the same time, if you're paycheck to paycheck, how can you afford to give that child the life that you want to give to that child? So then you're both kind of, you're putting yourselves both in a position where you are going to be potentially living in poverty.
Well, also there's you've got to have a bit of a common sense with it as well, that we need to have population growth for any country. Like, you need some level of growth. A certain number of people are going to have children. So, having support for 1 or 2 kids so that people can have the experience of having a child, and then the option to have a child isn't limited by class or money earnings, etc. But when you're talking about 6 fucking kids, like, you got to think that is not the government responsibility. It's not my responsibility to put tax money to support you for not being able to put a jacket on your penis. Like, it's, at
Was it
that
that family that had that reality show?
Yeah.
Where they
Octomum
had
or whatever.
like 18 or 19
Yeah.
kids or something?
Jesus.
Like, I get
By a
that your
different
religion
family.
tells you that you shouldn't, wrap it up, but you could at least like time it better, do something. Like 19 children. Like, you're not even raising your own kids at that point. Your children are raising your children.
Yeah, exactly. And then I knew somebody once who'd he'd had 3 kids, and he was talking about having more, and he was like, I just want to raise a nice family. And I was like, yeah, but my tax money is paying for you to have that family.
How is your tax money raising his family?
Because he was claiming benefits for it.
Oh.
Yeah. So in the UK, that's the way our benefit system works. They're like, if one of the parents isn't working and stuff, then they can get universal tax credits, like tax deductions.
Well, I mean, I guess we have that here. We have like mother's allowances and other parental allowances and childcare stuff. But like, you can raise a nice family that is a small, nice family. Like, you don't have to have a massive. You don't have to have a massive family. I mean, if some people want it, and good on them if they're happy and they're healthy and they can.
If you can afford it.
And they can do it, then that's fine. But, when you've got like millions of children going to school hungry because their parents can't afford to feed them, then perhaps there's something, pay the parents more and give them more employment opportunities and, give them a livable wage. So there's a lot of things that go into this.
That's the thing. It's such a nuanced thing. And I just think that, like, okay, I don't have any kids, and I don't want any kids. And just because of civic responsibility, I'm happy to put my tax money into a robust welfare state so that people who are less well off than me can be supported through my tax money. That's just because I'm a citizen of this country and we're all part of this system that we all work in. But when it comes to the point where they want 3 or more children, like, well, fuck off. Like, takes better responsibility for yourself.
but I think that's an interesting thing, because I think one of the problems that a lot of people who have like those higher incomes, right? It's like one of the biggest arguments against healthcare in the United States is that people who don't want to pay for the have-nots, instead of realizing that when everybody gets the same opportunities, everybody benefits from that. So like the people that they are trying to keep these medical benefits away from, at the end of the day, they're just taking people, like, it's going to sound really shitty, but they're usually like CEOs of companies and employers and whatever. So you don't want to have your potential workforce healthy and to work with you.
Exactly.
Like, it's kind of short-sighted. But then it should be that civil responsibility that, like, if I can, I will, because not everybody always can, right? It's not like people who are living on the streets, or the majority aren't there by choice. Circumstances put them in that place, and anybody can be put into those circumstances.
Well, we've had a few things here because of the NHS, where we find that if we work on preventative measures to stop healthcare problems occurring in the first place, like anti-obesity campaigns, which have been hampered by politics recently, but anti-obesity campaigns, stop smoking campaigns and all that stuff, that they prevent these healthcare problems developing, so people should be less reliant on the healthcare system for those problems. And I think that's why it's probably easier to sell lockdowns and face masks and stuff on the UK population than it was on the United States population, because
you're proactive and not reactive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then the government took the piss and abused us, but that's a different argument. But like, that's the thing, is that because of the healthcare system in the US, like, people say it's privatized, but it isn't really a proper privatized system. It's heavily regulated to the detriment of the users of the services. It's regulated in favor of insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies, and therefore it's not a proper free market system. And because they don't work on the preventative measures because of the pharmaceutical involvement, they want people on the medication. They give doctors lots of money so that they can push certain prescription tablets on people, because they want people unhealthy. It's like, that's the way their model works, is that they want an unhealthy population to draw on all of the interventions that they've got.
Well, yeah, it's like there's all those conspiracy theories about why they won't cure certain things. It's because they are too expensive. Like there's too much money wrapped up in. I think a lot of the United States has a lot of me attitudes, right? Like I think it's also a misperception about how the universal health care works, right? In Canada, that comes out of our tax dollars. The United States, they don't want their taxes going to help other people who aren't them in their healthcare because it's their taxes. But the United States and Canada, when it comes to income tax, pay very, very similar taxes. Like the United States is actually a little bit higher than the average tax rate in Canada, but we get this universal health care out of it because we divert our funds there instead of diverting it to things like the military or exactly. Like they put the money that could go into their own citizens into defense and the military, whereas Canada doesn't allocate our funds accordingly. But according to that map I sent you yesterday,
one
of the most peaceful countries.
Yeah, well, it's because you don't have your hands in other people's pies.
No, we are very much a not my monkeys, not my circus kind of country.
I have a very complicated opinion on foreign policy. I think there's a lot of stuff I don't know enough about, but there's things that I understand about American foreign policy and I get it. And there is some stuff that I'm like, that's a bit interventionist and ridiculous.
It is, but let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Let's stick to healthcare.
We wanted to have a light chinwag, and here we go.
It's your fault. You brought up the triangle and your haircut.
I brought up a haircut. I don't know how we went from haircut to defense spending. I'm going to take my vitamins. I've turned over a new leaf. 2023 is the year of vitamin taking.
And how's the lack of drinking going? Oh, you're actually doing it. If you managed it.
I'm not an alcoholic.
You just like to have a tipple.
I just like to have a tipple. Yes. No, it's going very well.
Good.
Weekend beverages. And I went to see Megan on the weekend, the movie, not the person, which was mediocre, predictable, cliche. Acting was terrible. But they sell beer at the movies now, so I was able to enjoy a cold beer in a tepid movie.
And did you have to take a tactical pee halfway through the movie?
I did not. I peed beforehand. Thank you. Although there is an app, I don't know if I've told you about it before, there's an app. It used to be free, but now you have to pay for it. It's called Run Pee. So it tells you at what point in a movie you can go to the bathroom. So it's like, at this point, when this character says this, you've got 3 minutes. So then you can go to the bathroom. And then while you're in there, they actually tell you what you're missing. So you can read what's happening. So that way you don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm going to miss an important part. It tells you. And it tells you like, you've got a longer one coming up in 10 minutes. So if you can wait, you've got a 6-minute one. That's a job I want.
Did there something similar in one of those shitty Seth Rogen movies? And then they developed a website. It was like a side plot. And it was about like boobs or something. And then
that was in the Knocked Up movie. It was I forget what their website was called, but it was a complete and total knockoff of another website, which comes up later in the movie, Mr. Skin, which tells you this is when you're going to see boobs.
I just remember in my friendship group when I was younger that like all the girls would talk about was it Kevin Bacon, and then like you could in Wild Things, if you pause at a certain point, you can see his penis.
Oh, but that was a terrible movie. But Matt Dillon was in it, which is why I watched it, because I've had a crush on Matt Dillon since 1984.
Maybe it's Matt Dillon. I can't remember if Kevin Bacon was in it. I've never seen it.
I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is in it. But yeah, I've had a crush on Matt Dillon since I saw him. I can't remember which one I saw him in first, The Outsiders or Rumblefish, but I enjoyed him.
He's good in Wayward Pines. If you like weird sci-fi.
I enjoyed that show until because it's M. Night Shyamalan. Everything's amazing till the end. Everything's amazing till I did enjoy it until the ending. He was in a movie. Oh my God. It was like a little independent film with Kristen Wiig and Annette Bening, and he's in it. And it's about Kristen Wiig was like I think she's a playwright or a poet, and she moved to New York, and then like she stopped writing, so she had to move back home to her like weird fucked up family. And Matt Dillon plays her mom's boyfriend, and he's got this like thick mustache, and he tells everyone he's part of the CIA or FBI, but they just think he's crazy, and they call him the Boosh. And, like it's a small part and a quirky character, but it was I quite enjoyed it. I'm gonna see what the movie is called because it's definitely worth a watch.
Didn't they do something with him in Modern Family, and then he goes out with Claire's mother, and like she was Claire's high school boyfriend?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Because he's Matt Dillon, right? He's cool as shit.
Yeah, it's so fucking funny. And like they really got into parody his whole image in it in Modern Family. I just thought it was fucking perfect.
Yes, it's called Girl Most Likely. Yeah, a failed New York playwright awkwardly navigates the transition from next big thing to last year's news. So it is worth a watch. And it's got Matt Dillon. We watched Bullet Train last night.
Was that shit?
On Netflix.
Oh no, wait, I've heard about this. It's the one with the assassins on a literal bullet train.
The cast is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes into the movie, I was on Amazon ordering the Blu-ray. Like if we need to go back and redo our Desert Island, because that's my Desert Island movie. It was ridiculous and hilarious. And
I saw
violent. It was the perfect movie.
Critical Drinker did a really brilliant breakdown of it because I was unsure about whether I wanted to watch it, and then Critical Drinker his reviews are just the best, and I was like, yeah, I need to watch this movie. It just looks so fucking good. It
was so fun, and it's the same director as Deadpool, the Deadpool movie. So it's got that like sense of humor and that vibe to it, but like as more cast members started coming out, you're like, because we didn't look it up at all. Like we saw it and we were like, yeah, that looks like it'll be fun. Let's watch it. And then as we're like, who is that? Who I think? Oh my God. Like crazy.
Yeah.
It was good. I'll probably watch it again today.
Apparently Brad Pitt, like he kept the hat from the film, and because of COVID at the time, he walked around with the face mask on with his little hat, his bucket hat, and he could just he was saying like he could go anywhere and just wear it, and nobody knew it was him. He turned up to a Tom Segura gig.
I remember reading something with I forget who it was. I think it was the singer of Iron Maiden. What's his name? Bruce Dickinson.
Yeah.
And they were asking him about because he's had such a long career, if he gets recognized. And he's like, no, because when I go out, he's like, I don't take an entourage with me. Right. So and I saw in another show, they kind of took that thought and they tried it out where they had a regular person like me with a group of men in suits looking like an entourage just around that person. And people were walking up and gawking and taking pictures and asking for autographs. No, it was just like Jill, the Walmart cashier that they put in this outfit with an entourage, and everybody thought oh my gosh, she must be famous. But then actually took but then there was that famous violinist who did that test at the New York subway. Yes. Yeah, that was so good. Yeah. And you actually have a famous person, but they don't have the fanfare and the all that around them. So you're just like, oh, hey, you look like that guy, but you're probably not.
Yeah. So, and most people don't understand enough about that type of music to understand that this is a world-class violinist.
Yeah, I would never have been able, seeing it afterwards, you're like, oh yeah, you could hear the talent in them, but I would never.
I had someone I used to work with, this bloke who was a world-class violinist, but he was also an analyst, and he had a side job where he'd go touring with all these really top orchestras in the world. Yeah, and then because he was transitioning out of that career into research and stuff, but he was still doing the violin in as a way to make extra money. And he brought his violin into work one day, and this violin was worth thousands of pounds. And I got him to play a couple of pieces in the office that day. Oh my God, it was amazing. Best day I've ever had at work.
It's a beautiful instrument. There were a couple of guys over the past few years who on America's Got Talent who were violin players, and it gives you a totally different perspective of the violin. Because like one of the guys was like a rock star with that thing. He was amazing. And it was such a sad story because he has a nerve condition where he's losing the ability to use his fingers. So he's just kind of like trying to play the violin as much as possible until they go. Such sad stories on that show.
It's a sad story.
It's heartbreaking. There was one, I think it was last year, the year before. A singer came out and she sang an original song. And as she's like, she's talking and she shares that she has like cancer in like every part of her body. She's got like a 5% chance of survival. So she starts singing this song about like, it's okay. It was a beautiful song. And then in the time from her audition to when she was supposed to come back, she played this video, like she sent a video saying like, I can't make it. I'm sorry. I'm too sick. And then like halfway through the season, they were like, she passed away. And yeah, like you only see her like the once or twice, right? But in those like 3-minute little vignettes, they tell you about this person's life and who they are. You kind of get a sense of them. So then when she passed, we were like, felt this like real loss.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking.
It's weird, like a little bit separate to that. I'm less cynical with something like that, but with a lot of the stuff they do in the Got Talent franchise, they really manipulate people's emotions with that. And apparently, like the people who've been on the show, if you find them on TikTok and stuff, they talk about how their stories were manipulated by the Got Talent.
Oh, I haven't seen that, but I've seen a couple. Like there's been a few times where it's actually like famous. Once upon a time famous people. Like this comedian got on one day and my husband and I were like, he looks really familiar. And in like the early 90s, he was doing like Just for Laughs. And like, so he had a whole career. Yeah. And now he's trying to make this comeback, which to me doesn't feel fair, right? Like it should be, it should be that like, 14-year-old singer who's really shy. Like, there was a girl from the UK who, I think she was 14 or 15. And when she came out, she was like crazy shy and she could barely even make eye contact. And then she started singing and it was like, Elvis and Janis Joplin and like
wow,
and Mick Jagger just merged into this one girl, and it was insane to watch. It was insane to watch the transformation when she sang. Are you looking for fun new glasses that won't break the bank? Go to Zeelool.com. They have daily flash sales. You can find frames as low as $2. Prescription, non-prescription, sunglasses, they have it all. Use my promo code to save.
I'm trying to figure out how, like, I know certain people on TikTok, like, where in the algorithm have they kind of placed me so that I know certain people? Because as I go through it, I'll see somebody commenting on someone else's thing. I'm like, oh, that's why I know you, because that person, so you can see the links. So, and I'm trying to, and then, so when you mentioned the Got Talent stuff, I remember that, like, some of the first accounts I ever followed, obviously you in that first batch that I ever followed on TikTok, right? Do you follow an Asian guy who was on Got Talent once, but he does loads of really stupid, like, skits, like where people try stuff on TikTok and then he'll do like a really ridiculous oriented version of it, and he's been on a few Got Talents?
No, but I saw one of his videos. If it's the same guy, I don't follow any TikTok accounts that do skits like that. I just don't. That's not my thing. But I saw him. If it's the same guy, does he have like 2 ponytails?
No.
Oh, okay, because I saw
he's got
someone
short black hair.
Oh no, okay, then no. I saw someone like that on Reddit the other day. And,
okay.
Yeah. But no, I don't. I don't follow a lot of skit accounts.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure out how, like, I got kind of, because it's so random that I got sent your account in my FYP. Do you know what I mean?
It was the stars aligning to bring us together to make this media empire that is our podcast.
Yeah, the 44-1 empire. Hey, every empire's got to start somewhere,
Exactly. I mean,
look
Steve
how
Jobs
England
was
started.
always Steve Jobs. At one point, he was little Stevie.
England used to be covered in, like, I don't know, Celtic tribes and low technology, and then the Romans came along, and then the Vikings came along, and then we empired. So,
see,
got to start somewhere.
All steps, blah blah blah. Cliche here.
Is there alcohol in that?
No, just Mio. Strawberry watermelon flavored.
What? Strawberry watermelon?
Mm-hmm.
Strawberry and watermelon, or strawberry watermelon?
I don't know what that means.
Either do I. That's why I was
Have
surprised.
you ever seen a strawberry watermelon?
No.
That fruit doesn't exist. Strawberry watermelon.
If I like live my life not believing in things that I haven't seen with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe 90% of what people say.
That's fair. But you think you would have heard of a strawberry watermelon. Although I did see a hybrid fruit in a grocery store. I forget what they called it. Oh, I forget what they called it. It looked like an apple, but it tastes like a grape. I haven't tried it because every time I see it, it's like stupid expensive. And I also feel like, yeah. And I feel like that probably didn't happen naturally. So
yeah. I
don't know if I'm about Frankenstein fruits, but
years ago, my mum had a lung tumor, and then when they got rid of it, they asked her to eat loads of like weird fruits and stuff, and then they gave her like a list of things that she should eat, just because it's supposed to aid in your recovery and to help. Like, I don't know. They were just, I think at that back in the early 90s, it was like, okay, we think this works, just do this. Maybe it can't hurt you.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of talk about like alkaline diets and stuff like that, and to keep the pH out of your body, which I mean, it probably makes sense, right? Like, I think it makes sense if you just do it right and don't.
Well, I think if you're at risk, like if you've had a disease or something of some kind, then like it means you've got a propensity to attract that. So if you do whatever you can to mitigate future occurrences of it.
But even if you don't have that, you could do like we were talking about the preventative measures, right? Like it's like it's like my mom doesn't buy milk that has lactose in it because she thinks she's lactose intolerant, and she'll tell you this straight face while she's eating yogurt.
Yeah.
And then she'd be like, she would eat something sweet. She's like, oh, my dear bitch. I'm like, you don't have diabetes. She's like, yeah, I know. Preventative.
Well, speaking of what the fuck is wrong with you, you wanted to do a couple of videos before we lose time.
I did.
Men are not born with their value. Everything that a man has, he has had to work for. He's not been born with this. He might have been born with his height, but the way that he looks, his body, his career, his charisma, these are all things and skills that he's had to learn, acquire, and build up. Whereas a woman, as long as she doesn't get fat, she will have value up until a certain age. An 18-year-old girl can walk into a club and potentially sleep with a millionaire. A man of the same age who is equally as attractive could never do that.
So he says, as long as a woman doesn't get fat, she has value to a certain age. And then he says 18. So he's essentially saying after 18, women are worthless and men have had to fight and work for everything because they're not born with a job or any of those things. Like, when the fuck are women born with any of those things either?
And also, I don't think he's saying that women are worthless right after 18. What he's saying is he has a sliding scale of decreasing value.
Yes, we depreciate like a car after.
Yeah, exactly. That's what his opinion is.
After the age of 18. But the fact that he thinks women, like, he's equating what women have. Like, women have good looks. They can walk in and like bang a millionaire. And is that his pinnacle of success? Like, that's all we should be striving for, because men have to work for their physique. Like, he doesn't think women have to work for their physique. He even says their body, their physique, but a woman, as long as she doesn't get fat. Like, you don't think that requires some sort of effort? Like, you don't think women have to do the same things that men have to do?
And also the weird amount of value and emphasis he places on getting fat. Like, I would be interested to know, what does he think getting fat means?
It's unusual how, like, the same kind of men who get so mad at women for saying they want a tall guy will be the first ones to say, she better not be fat.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've seen other people talk about that too, that like they say that, you know, all these men's rights activists and incels and red pill people, we need a collective term for them, but the douche bros. There you go, that's the collective term, douche bros. And
no, because they're not bros.
Yeah.
Because then, like, bro also has, like, you got your gym bros and your, I don't know. We'll have to ponder a better name for it.
Yeah, but ponder a better collective term for them. Yep. And because, like, they always bitch about women wanting, like, having tastes and attractions and things that they like, and being open and talking about them and having sexual awareness and self-awareness. And then they come out with a catalogue of exactly the kind of woman that they want.
Exactly. Like, they get so mad. They say, like, you have to have a 6-figure salary, you have to have a 6-pack, you have to have this. But then 2 weeks ago, That guy wanted blonde or brunette, 5'3" to 5'7", 18 to 24, had to have a high-pitched voice, had to be like, people are allowed to have preferences. If that preferences doesn't match you, then that's fine. You also have preferences. And like,
it's normal to have preferences, but it's abnormal to be a fucking bigot about them.
Exactly. Like, you cannot have a preference and then begrudge somebody else for having a preference.
Yeah, exactly. And
men are not born with, nobody is born with, you're not born with anything.
But to
anything you have, you were given or you have to work for. You maybe like trip into a family that has money, but you still have to actually develop as a person.
Yeah, I think it's like it's yet another douche guy. I don't know what to fucking call them. Ignorant people. I don't know. Anyway,
future offender.
Yeah. It's yet another douche bro though, that he's overemphasizing the biological aspect and he's de-emphasizing the societal aspect. He's kind of putting it all on the DNA and the genetics is what makes you as a human being, and he's saying it's that. But then if that was true, then the men wouldn't have to work on their charisma or their body type. Like, if DNA was everything, it would just
it's like
growing.
There's all these studies that are coming out now about how men of a certain age, I think it's like 18 to 21, are having less sex than the predecessors. And it's like they're trying to make it sound like it's a failing on women's parts. It's like, be fuckable and you will get fucked, right? Like, it's you can't just show up and be like, if someone doesn't fuck me soon, I'm gonna go crazy. That's not how it works. It's not our responsibility to make sure that men's mental health is intact by throwing them one every once in a while. Like, if you want to wet your whistle, have a whistle that needs to be wet. But also, the same kind of men who say, like, they're saying, like, well, men aren't having sex and it's affecting their mental health. So women, you need to step up and have sex with these men. And then what if women did? Then what would happen? Those same men, after they've got off, would be shit talking their body counts.
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing is just so double standard. It's actually quite hard to tackle it because the logic is just so warped.
And it's always cis white men. I know that you fall into that category, but it's always cis white men who are making these complaints when you realize you did it to yourselves, right? Like, you had the opportunity to make things amazing for everybody, but instead, historically, subjugated, enslaved, oppressed, raped, and pillaged their way to a point where nobody wants to play with them anymore. And now they're like, but why? What do we do?
What do we do wrong? And it's like
so hard. It's so hard to be us.
And like, just talking from personal experience, that, you know, as a straight white man, I haven't encountered, like, since I grew up and I changed my life, I'll say, I haven't encountered these issues that they're talking about. Because I adapted, I realized that the way that we're taught is wrong, and you need to live your life better. You need to rise above your evolutionary drives. You need to rise above the things that the older men have taught you that was wrong and what your friends think is wrong. You need to listen to these other people, particularly women, who are saying certain things. And once you collect all of this knowledge together that everybody's tried to show you and help you learn from, then you have to make the most of that opportunity and actually grow and learn. And then, like, I think I was probably started changing my life when I was about 16, 17. That was probably when I started trying to change it. Obviously, it took a while to get traction and a lot of years, a lot of hard work. But, like, the more I've developed and grown up as a human being, the less I've encountered these fucking issues they're talking about. Well,
and that's the point about taking accountability, right? Like, if you're not happy in your situation, it's not the responsibility of everybody around you to fix your situation. You need to do some self-work on your, like, to understand, what is it that's making me unhappy? Where do I need to improve? How can I become a better person? I don't know, it's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? Like, instead of just owning it and taking accountability, they put it out to everybody else. It's everybody else's problem, right? Especially like this is a young, decent looking white man who has every opportunity ahead of him, because that's historically how they've made it, right? Like, white men have paved the way for white men over generation after generation after generation. And now is the only time in history that it may have been a bit difficult for white men, because people are tired of their shit. And then finally they're getting a smidgen of a taste of what they've done to other people, and they're like, we don't like it.
Well, that's the thing, is like, I don't have much bitterness towards like various groups that he would probably describe as woke leftist groups or whatever. Like I don't have much bitterness towards them because essentially they're trying to play the game that my demographic has played. And even though I've never played that game myself, I've benefited from other people having played that game.
And it's a good analogy because like these guys now, they have made the rules of the game. They've changed the rules time and time again. And now that people have either decided, I don't want to play anymore, or I figured out the rules and I'm playing, they don't like it.
Exactly.
It's like you had thousands of years and you still
well, it wasn't really an issue until like the 1600s, I think. Like maybe the 1500s when colonialism started happening. And then when like that, I don't want to use the term patriarchy, but I can't think of another way to describe it. So that's a default term for now. But like the white male patriarchy that had formed within Europe, and then we went out then and pushed it on the rest of the world because we were more technologically advanced. We were able to then push ourselves out there. So we were the ones that played the game first, and we played it well for that group, not for everyone else. I don't mean well amorally, I just mean well for them. That they played the game well, and then they dominated all these other cultures and they dominated women. What we're seeing now is the balance of power is changing. Technology has enabled that. Historically, technology has only ever benefited, or no, it's benefited everybody. I mean, technology has a huge benefit towards minority groups or oppressed groups. The more technological advances we have, the freer women have become. And that's what we're seeing now. We're getting to the point where we're on the cusp of being able to achieve true equality. And there's certain things holding us back.
Well, and I think that men like this and the other ones that we've talked about in the past, they're not where, they have always been, let's say for anybody who's listening, like at 100, right? And all the groups that below them they have oppressed over the years have been at 50. So now that those groups are rising to like 70, 75, 80, instead of those men recognizing that these people are rising up to where we are, for lack of a better analogy, they think it's them being dropped down to it. So they feel as though they're losing ground instead of realizing you're maintaining everything that you've had. Everybody else is just rising up to meet you.
Yeah, which then the thing is they're so ignorant that like historically it's only ever benefited society. When you raise everyone else up, it has only ever enabled people, that the whole of society, to be better.
Exactly. If you can benefit, if you're only benefiting yourselves and everybody else, but they don't care. That's the thing, right? Like this type of person doesn't care. They always want to be on top. So even if every other group gets to 100, they still want to be at 110. There's they always want there to be that. And it's like CEOs, right? What does the average CEO make? 30 times what the employees doing the work are? And people get wrapped up in that mindset. When I was a manager in a call center, like I would hear other managers in the call center who'd been managers longer than I have. They would talk about the call center agents like they were nothing, right? Like they would even call them by their level, the level 4s. And it's like, you know what? Like if every single manager walked out today, it would be business as usual. If five call center agents call in sick, we are in a fucking shambles, right? Like never forget who's actually doing the work.
There's the perfect example of that. I don't know if you know about this, but do you know what happened to the Belgian government recently?
No.
Okay, I don't know how long it happened for. I feel like it was about 8 or 10 years. They had a hung parliament, which basically means that no one was governing. There was no one in charge at the top. And guess what? The country kept going. Everything kept moving. Stuff kept happening. Everyone was happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look what happened during the initial lockdown when people couldn't get a haircut.
Yeah, exactly.
Lost their fucking minds.
Yeah, the way that because it's so short-sighted of the people at the top, because all they're doing is capping their earnings effectively. Like they're making short-term gains now, like with the big wealth transfer that happened during COVID and stuff. It's only hampered them because it's going to cap their future gains. They're like, if you enable more wealth creation from the working class and you enable them to have better lives and you enable them to earn more money, it means more wealth for the people at the top eventually. It just makes sense for them.
They spend more, they go out more, they consume more. Like when people don't have anything, they have to tighten up their belts. And they don't do anything, they don't go anywhere. So then they talk about businesses shutting down, people aren't spending as much. Like, yeah, what are they supposed to fucking spend? We've long since passed the days where you could walk into a trader and be like, I'll give you my canoe oar for your beaver pelts. Like, we don't live in that world anymore. People need fucking cash.
Yeah. Well, like if I remember back into the late 80s, early 90s, my mum and stepdad worked in a nightclub. And then you think like the guy that owns the nightclub has lots of money because he owns a fucking nightclub, right? But there was a recession, and then hardly anyone was going out, which means that my mum, as one of the hostesses or waitresses, whatever you call them, she was getting much less tips, so she wasn't taking as much money home. My stepdad, as the DJ, wasn't getting much money because the club wasn't bringing in much people, so he couldn't get as much from the nightclub, which meant then that he can't go out and spend money in the shops that all of those people that would be in the nightclub would earn at. And then all of this means that no one's going to the fucking nightclub. And then the guy at the top, who was supposed to make all the money from the nightclub, earns nothing.
Exactly. When the common people thrive, everybody thrives.
Exactly.
And I'm lumping all of us into we're all common people.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I've been trying to tell people that all of this stuff about race and sexuality and all these other things that are being presented in the media, they're all distractions to get us to stop thinking about the real problem. And the real problem is between us and the people that we elect to run our governments and the people in the top of the corporations.
I think that's why the same issues keep coming up over and over and over again, right? Like if you look at, like, we watched occasionally like old Saturday Night Live episodes from the 80s or like old TV shows from the 80s. And it's the same issues then as they are now. And they're not difficult issues to address, but they're hot topic issues. So it's like a magician who has, the beautiful ladies on stage to distract you from the rabbit coming out of the hat. It's like, oh, we want to hide what this, fuckery the government is doing over here.
Yeah.
So, hey, what about the gays? They shouldn't marry. Am I right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Like they just keep bringing back these things that they know are going to be divisive to distract everybody from what else is happening.
Yeah, and to support your hypothesis there, I encourage anybody to read up about the history of why the Magna Carta happened. There was high taxation, money was being taken out of the north of England, everyone was living in poverty, all because of a foreign war that no one wanted. And so we brought in Magna Carta to try and defend, to try and protect the people in the north and the northern lords so that they didn't have to give money to the crown. And then they signed it in, everything was hunky-dory. And then King John went and fucked everyone over anyway and said the Magna Carta counted for shit. And he wasn't going to abide by it. And if you want to see what people are doing now, the people in power, the whole history of the Magna Carta is happening again.
Do you remember that movie? I forget what it was. It was where this president had like low numbers or something. So then his advisors were like, anytime there's a war, president does well, you should start a war. So they they faked this whole like war to improve the president's ratings and like get people scared, because people that are scared do very predictable behaviors.
Yeah. When you get an out group, the in group coalesces against the out group. I mean, that's why the United States is almost in a constant state of war. That's why in the UK our government is pushing an immigration crisis that it doesn't really exist.
Gotta keep people watching the news.
Yeah, and arguing with each other.
You know how you can tell if somebody's a good friend? Stop calling them. Let a couple weeks go by and see if they reach out to you. And then before you know it, 6 months is going to pass, and then a year is going to go by, and you're going to think, man, this person hasn't even checked in. And then you realize that the entire friendship was based around the fact that you did all the planning and initiating. Stop pouring into people that aren't reciprocating. I love you.
Someone's never had an introvert as a friend before.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
The whole like testing of the friendship, that's what pisses me off the most about this. It's like, what if they're doing the same thing to you that you're doing to them? Right? Like, oh, they haven't checked up on me in a few months. You haven't checked up on them either. Like, it's if you feel that you need to test your friendships, then you are the one who's the bad friend.
Yeah.
And the sad music she had in the background, like she's trying to make a valid point.
Yeah.
Like, I have a friend of mine whom she's one of my closest friends. I've known her maybe 10, 12 years. And she is the one who reaches out 80% of the time, not because I don't want to hang out with her, but because I'm perfectly happy staying right here.
Yeah.
Like going out takes a lot of like, okay, that's going to be a lot. It's going to be people-y.
Yeah.
Right? Like she's an extrovert, so she is happy to go out multiple times a week. I go out once a weekend, and then I need to, like, if I've got 2 sets of plans on a weekend, I'm done. So this woman just doesn't understand what it's like to have friends, be friends with an introvert, but also why do you feel the need to test your friends?
Yeah.
I would be,
weird.
that's why they're not calling you, because they know, like, oh, fuck, she's up to her shenanigans.
Yeah, she's up to her mind fuckery again. I have no time for that.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got someone in your life who is testing you and making you constantly run through these hurdles to prove that you're their friend, then that's someone who is not worth your time. Like, I get how some people maybe have some past trauma and they need that extra validation. That I understand, but this just feels malicious.
Yeah,
like, she's trying to set up a gotcha. Like,
exactly.
I knew you were going to call me.
Yeah. There is like subtle cues if somebody's doing it because of a past trauma and that. And typically, like, if you've got a relationship that's close, where it's close enough that somebody's worried about that, you might actually detect that anyway. Or you should do if you're close friends. In which case, you would reach out because you know that your friend has a bit of social anxiety or, abandonment issues, and like you're just your subconscious, you're aware of them.
And some people, like, I have, one of my oldest friends, we've lived across the street from each other for years. We've known each other since we were 3 years old. Once every couple of years, we'll check in with each other and go out for a meal. It's like no time has passed. We make plans to do it again, and then we never do for another year. But neither of us sees that the lack of contact is a test or a gotcha or anything other than your life is busy, my life is busy, you've got your things, I've got my things. Like, shit gets in the way. And if she was the type of person who needed more validation and needed more assurances, then some people just aren't meant to be friends with the people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, not everything is for everyone. If I had a friend who was high maintenance and needed to like talk to me all the time and see me, like, we need to go out 3 times. You aren't been high. You aren't been high maintenance. If we need to like hang out in person 3 times a month, like that, I can't commit to that. Right? So like, you need to know what the boundaries and levels of your relationship are.
Yeah, and like the context of the friendship as well. Like, what is that friendship? Do you both see the friendship in the same way? And do you both consent to the friendship being that way?
Exactly. And you don't have to be in constant contact to know that someone's got your back, right? Like that friend of mine who I've known for a dozen years, if we see each other once every couple of months, we're not ones to like text all the time, right? Like if I see something funny, I'll send it to her, same, but we're not constantly checking in. When we text, it's usually to make plans. We'll go out, have a good time. But I know, and I hope she knows that if she were to call or I were to call her and say like, I need your help, we would drop everything and be there for each other, right? Like the depth of our friendship is there, even though we're not constantly like, what are you wearing today? What'd you have for lunch?
How much did your poo weigh today?
You're such a boy. You're such a boy.
So are you then? You said you weigh your own poo.
No, I don't weigh my own poo. I have on occasion weighed myself before and after a poo out of curiosity, but it's not like I do it on the regular. There's a reason the camera's always facing this way. I have my poo collection.
Yeah.
My poo-lection.
I think that's like, I forgot what I was going to say. I just got distracted with the collection of poo.
The poo-lection?
Yeah.
Although knowing that some people have like saved their toes to send to a bar in Dawson City, Yukon, I would not put anything past. I wouldn't put anything past people.
Well, we're pretty much done, so we might as well fade to black. So.